Hi, everyone. We're the Office for the Prevention of Harassment and Discrimination, and we're going to be talking to you for a few minutes about what it is that our office does here on campus.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Edens, and I'm an investigation and training specialist in the Office for the Prevention of Harassment and Discrimination, which we refer to as OPHD. I'm joined by Sarah Clegg, who is the university's Title IX officer and senior director of OPHD, as well as Noelle Facette, a learning and development specialist in our office, and Brittany Hopkins, the senior investigation and training specialist. So part of what our office does is make sure that Sonoma State University stays in compliance with Title IX. Title IX is a federal law that states no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance, like Sonoma State University. In addition to Title IX, OPHD follows the California State University executive orders. So we have policies that are inclusive of Title IX and go beyond. The CSU policy is all students have the right to participate fully in CSU programs and activities free from discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. The CSU prohibits harassment of any kind, including sexual harassment, as well as sexual misconduct, dating and domestic violence, and stalking. The CSU's discrimination policy covers Title IX and goes beyond that to cover many more forms of harassment and discrimination. The scope of OPHD works with discrimination and harassment based on a protected class. So like gender, race, national origin, physical or mental disability status, to name a few. We also look at dating and domestic violence, as well as stalking, sexual misconduct, employee and student relationships. So an example of an action, discrimination or harassment happens because of a protected status would be that a person was denied the opportunity to participate in a class event because of their disability. Stalking would be repeated unwanted contact, and relationship or dating violence are different in that dating can be a one-time incident, whereas domestic violence would be people that live together. The role of OPHD is that we're a neutral office. We don't take sides. We offer a fair and impartial treatment and process to all parties. The main goal is to provide support and help remove barriers that prevent students from fully participating in roles at Sonoma State University. We have authority over the campus and people affiliated with the campus. This is not a criminal, we're not criminal investigators. So there are different policies that we look at compared to law enforcement.
So on campus, we have several resources that are available for students. The first is our office, OPHD. There's also the Respondent Services Coordinator for individuals who may be named in a complaint that comes to our office. University Police is also available, as well as the Dean of Students. The Dean of Students receives care reports, which can be submitted for a variety of reasons, not just the topics that our office covers. The Hub Cultural Center can also be a fantastic resource for students. There are a few confidential resources available on campus. The first is CAPS, Counseling and Psychological Services, and the Confidential Advocate. So anything that is shared with either of those two resources is not shared with anyone else on campus. The Student Health Center is also listed. However, while they do not report to our office, because they're medical professionals, they are required to report to police anything that they may suspect be the result of sexual violence or domestic violence. Off campus, there's Verity, which is the local sexual assault and rape crisis center. They're available 24/7, 365 days a year. The Family Justice Center can also help with legal resources, for example, obtaining a restraining order, getting access to safe houses, or just basic victim advocacy. The local police, so off-campus police in the surrounding communities of Santa Rosa, Rohnert Park, Cotati, always available by 911. And in terms of the local hospitals, the Sutter Health in Santa Rosa can perform SART exams. None of these resources report back to campus. The three main resources on campus when it comes to sexual misconduct, dating violence, or stalking are University Police, our office, OPHD, and the Confidential Advocate. But the way that we handle these topics is slightly different. So University Police is mostly focused on the legal process. They're looking at criminal prosecution, enforcing laws, and are responsible for all individuals who may come onto campus, so not just students or staff, for example. They are considered a first responder. They're available 24/7, 365 days a year. Our office is really focused on administrative adjudication. So we enforce and uphold the CSU policies. We have a different standard of evidence that we look at when we are examining complaints that come to our office, and we deal primarily with the Sonoma State community, so students, staff, faculty, affiliated people. We are not first responders. We are available Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. The Confidential Advocate is really focused on supporting the individual. She's available to all students, and there's no level or criteria that you need in order to meet with her. Her focus is on resiliency, personal empowerment, and focusing on well-being. She also is not a first responder, available during the standard business hours. Reports come to our office in a couple of different ways. One of the most direct ways is emailing or getting in touch with a member of our office directly. There's also employees who are required to report to OPHD. Those employees are, for example, your advisor, an orientation leader, professor, on-campus supervisor, pretty much everyone except for the two confidential resources we referenced earlier, CAPS and the Confidential Advocate. Please know that anyone that you reach out to in terms of an employee on campus is trained to handle your information with respect for your privacy and with concern for your well-being. So it's for those reasons that they report any instance of sexual misconduct or harassment to our office. There's also the online form, which is available on our website. If we want to go to the next slide, we'll show you how to access it. So the gray button, report it, with a blue arrow, as well as some of the examples of items that you can report. And when you click on the report it button, it will take you to our online form. It looks just like this. You're able to submit this form anonymously, so you do not have to put your name on it, but we do encourage you to share as much information as you have, especially in the names of the parties involved. That way our office can reach out to them to provide support. So again, you don't have to know everything, but we encourage you to share as much as you do know. All right, so Sarah's going to walk us through what happens once an incident is reported to our office.
Once an incident is reported to our office, we call that a disclosure. So once something is disclosed and reported to our office, our first step is to reach out to the student, to contact them, ask them to come in and speak with us, or speak with us virtually, obviously right now, and find out what it is that they need. We can connect students with resources, with accommodations. When I say accommodations, I mean things such as change in class schedule, change in living environment, anything that we can do to, again, remove those obstacles that are in the way of students achieving academic success. we will attempt to do. And then we move on to resolution options. So if the student who reported to us wants to pursue a resolution option, they have two. One is an early resolution, and the other is an administrative investigation. So let me talk about the difference between the early resolution, which we call the ERA, and an investigation. So to begin with, an early resolution is an informal process, very similar to a settlement. What will happen is the complainant or the complaining party will meet with one of us, discuss their concerns and all possible resolutions. Our office will then meet with all of the parties involved and try to come to an agreeable resolution. Both parties have to agree on the resolution, as does our office as the representative of the university. If an early resolution is agreed upon by both parties and by the university, we consider the matter resolved. No further investigation can take place. It's important to note that this is not a resolution option that includes a finding, so nobody is going to be found in violation of policy or responsible for any violation of policy. There is no admission of wrongdoing otherwise. It may include an informal inquiry just to gather the facts, but as I said, it does not include an investigation. Now, there are some cases that require investigation, and in some certain circumstances, students request an investigation. So what does a formal investigation look like? A formal complaint is submitted to our office, and an investigator is assigned to the case. And that investigator will then conduct interviews and compile evidence that they gather through speaking with all of the parties and witnesses. Both parties will have an opportunity to review everything that the investigator collects and respond to all of that evidence and testimony. And then there are an analysis and a determination is then made as to whether it is more likely than not that the executive order in question was violated. Now, some cases, the most serious cases, actually go to a hearing, a live in-person hearing, and in that case, there is more detail that we can certainly talk about at a later date. But it's important to know that some cases will go to a live hearing. And then finally, both parties can appeal the outcome directly to the chancellor's office. I'd like to talk about student rights. It's important to know that, as we mentioned before, we strive for neutrality and providing a fair and equitable process to everybody involved. That is our number one goal. We conduct impartial investigations. You should expect the investigation to be neutral and impartial. You should also expect that any investigation, inquiry, or resolution will be a private. As we spoke about before, we are not a confidential office, but we do respect parties' privacies. There are very few people that we share information with, and it's only on a need-to-know basis. You can also expect that we will provide interim measures if they are reasonable and if we're able to. Those are things that we will do in the interim as we're conducting an investigation to make your life on campus more comfortable as you go through this process. You also have the right to have an advisor with you throughout the entire process. We know how stressful this is, and we know how confusing it can be, and it's very helpful for some students to have somebody with them to advise them, somebody that's in their corner. You have the right to provide us information such as witnesses that you'd like us to speak to and evidence that you would like us to review. As we mentioned before, this is not a criminal process. We're an administrative investigative process. So to put that in another way, we're not CSI. We don't have the ability to conduct forensic testing of any kind, but we do collect evidence such as electronic communication, pictures, videos, photos. You can request information from us at any time. You also have the right to review the evidence that we collect. And finally, as I said before, you have the right to appeal any decision that our office makes. Before I pass this on to the next speaker, I'd just like to speak really briefly about a current update that our office is working through. As you may have seen, the Department of Education recently released new Title IX regulations. These are going to be signed into law, and we should expect that to happen sometime in mid-August. There's a lot to these Title IX regulations, and I just wanted to briefly talk about a few of the things that may impact you as a student once if you're involved with our office beyond August. The first thing is hearings. With these new regulations, many more of our investigations may go to a hearing. Right now, we send the most egregious and serious cases to a live hearing. These new regulations may change that, and the majority of our cases may be decided by live hearing. That also really boosts the role of the advisor, and the advisor becomes much more participatory. And if somebody wants an advisor and doesn't provide their own, we will be required to provide a pool of advisors for you to choose from. So if you want an advisor, we can get you an advisor. Probably the biggest difference is once we are in the live hearing, the advisors are now the people that conduct cross-examination. And while I don't like using these legal terms very much, these are the terms that the Department of Education use, so we're going to stick with those. What that means is during a hearing, the advisors will now have the right to ask questions of the other party and the witnesses on behalf of the person that they are advising. And for those of you who might be wondering or might be wanting to ask, yes, you can have an attorney as an advisor. These changes, as I said, go into effect in mid-August. Between now and then, OPHD and all of our campus partners and our partners with the Chancellor's Office are working really hard to get all of the essential updates and training that we need to make these changes and have a smooth transition for all of you.
Okay, I'm going to spend some time talking about our prevention and education efforts at SSU. In addition to doing the resolution pieces, our office is also focused on prevention education to help reduce the amount of incidents that we see here on campus. So we look at things like consent, bystander intervention, so how we can step up in moments to help prevent harm on campus. We teach people about healthy relationships and how to identify if someone is in an unhealthy or potentially abusive relationship. We raise awareness about these issues and also help to get out information about how to report them, similar to what we're doing today. We do this through a couple of ways. The first one is our online training that happens each year, which we'll talk about at the end of the presentation. We do in-person trainings each year, specifically with our Greek chapters and all of our athletic teams. We have events that we help to put on, or we put on ourselves, where we may bring speakers to campus. We have activities, things that people can do on their way to class to help engage in some of these activities. We have poster campaigns that go up, and then we also go to any sort of requested training. Sometimes we'll come into classrooms or other forums where we're asked to be a part of. One thing I want to take a few moments to talk about is consent. Like I said, this is one of the topics that our office talks about. I want to spend a few moments talking about consent because a lot of times people may come into our office because they feel like they've experienced something that is not consensual. So we want to break down this acronym for you so you can really understand what the expectations of consent are here at SSU. When we're thinking about consent, consent is something that we need for every sexual activity that we're involved in. Sexual activity could include touching of any sort, whether of like intimate body parts, so someone's breast, someone's butt, someone's genitals. It includes any type of penetration, whether that be oral, anal, vaginal, with someone's body or another object. And it also includes kissing, which is an important thing to remember because sometimes our own personal definition of sexual activity may not include that. But those are all pieces that we require to have consent before engaging in. The other thing is that consent is actually something we use every single day in our lives, whether or not we realize it, right? When we ask someone, hey, can I borrow your car? Can I sit in the seat next to you? Do you have a piece of gum that I can have? Can I pet your dog? Can I hold your baby? These are all different ways where we're actually using consent every day. And sex is just another piece where we're using that consent. We could talk for an entire hour about what consent looks like, but I just want to take a few minutes to, again, break down this acronym, this CARE. The first component is that consent has to be clearly communicated to us. That yes has to happen either verbally or through really distinct actions. So it's important that we're engaged throughout that interaction to make sure that someone is clearly communicating it. If at any point you're unsure if someone's communicating it, that is an opportunity to pause and check in with the person. The other component is that this has to be communicated while someone is capacitated. There are several forms of incapacitation, but what we see most often on college campuses is incapacitation from alcohol. So when someone is giving us that yes, we want to make sure they are not stumbling, they're not slurring their words, they're not vomiting, or they're not showing any other sign that their body is being really impacted by the alcohol that they're consuming. So we're getting that clear and capacitated communication. We always want to make sure that it is always affirmative. So someone is excited and freely giving that yes to you. There's no pressure, there's no guilt, there's no coercion that's happening. We don't want just any old yes. We want a yes that someone is really excited about and giving on their own accord. The next piece is that consent is reciprocal, meaning that every person who is involved in that sexual interaction is responsible for making sure that they have the other person's consent. I want us to throw out those stereotypes of who is supposed to ask for consent. It's really everyone's responsibility. And it's also retractable, meaning that consent can be taken away at any time, either before or during sexual activity. And if our partner is taking away their consent and retracting it, it's our responsibility to make sure that we stop that sexual activity immediately. People have the right to change their minds and to set those boundaries for themselves. And with the last component of it, we're making sure that we're getting consent with every sexual act. So we could have the time of our lives making out with someone. And if we're wanting to do something next, we got to check in with them to make sure that they're on the same page that we are. Yes to one act does not necessarily mean yes to another. We got to check in. And this has to happen every time that we engage in sexual activity. So someone could have consented to something with us in the past, but again, we want to check in and communicate with that person to make sure that we're on the same page. When we're thinking about consent and we're thinking about the different components of it, it's really a way that we can ensure that we're having safe and responsible and enjoyable sexual activity with the folks on campus. So aside from consent, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, I want to talk for a minute about our mandatory online training that happens. So each year, all of our students are required to take an annual online training. And this is something that is actually issued to all 23 CSU campuses. So SSU is not alone in this. For our students, new students will take a 90-minute training called Not Anymore. And then each year after that, our returning students take a 30-minute refresher course. And these will cover a variety of topics from consent, relationships, stalking, harassment reporting, and a bunch of different things. The training will go live at the beginning of the semester, and you'll get lots of notifications and ways reminding you of how to complete the training. So you'll get an item on your SSU student to-do list. You'll get weekly notifications via email sent to your Sonoma State email address. It's really important to know that this training must be completed before you can register for spring classes. So when you get that first email, make sure that you're carving out the amount of time that you need so that you can get it done. One, so you have the information for yourself here on campus, but also so that you can register for those classes. Otherwise, a hold will be put on your account that will prevent you from it. And when you want to complete the training, it's really easy to use. This year, you're going to use all of your SSU login info that you use for a lot of other things on campus. So what we'll do is we are going to answer a couple of frequently asked questions that get asked to our office. And on the slide after this, you'll get to see our email address so that if you have any individual questions, you can always reach out to us. So I will start off with the first one that we sometimes get. So sometimes students may ask, I'm not sure if what I experienced falls under OPHD. What should I do? And the answer is that you should come to us anyways. We'll talk through, get some details, see if it does fall within our office, and if it doesn't fall under our scope, then we're definitely going to connect you with the folks on campus who it does fall under.
The next question is, what if I don't want to take any action right now or ever? OPHD is able to give accommodations and connect any students with resources at any time. OPHD will generally only take action when you want it, unless there's a greater threat to the campus community. For example, the other person involved has had multiple instances of violence. Generally, all students' participation is voluntary.
Why do employees report to your office? There are a couple, but the biggest one is that we want to make sure that we're getting you the resources that you need in order to succeed at Sonoma State. We also want to make sure that Sonoma State community is remaining safe. So those are two of the biggest reasons employees come forward to our office. Please know that all employees are trained to handle your situation with respect for your privacy and out of concern for your well-being.
So the next question is, how can we reach you when classes are remote? Obviously, things are looking a lot different right now than we expected them to, but we are still here, we're still working, and we're still ready to support you and look for resolutions to any of your complaints. You can reach us via email. You're going to see our email addresses on the next slide. You can also call us with the campus numbers that are provided. Those voicemails come directly to our emails, so we can reach out to you once we receive them. Really the best way though, and the way that I would encourage you to reach out to us, is to file an online report. Even if you're not sure if what you want to report belongs with our office, go ahead and submit a report. The worst that can happen is we can say, it doesn't belong with us, but let us help you find the correct resource for resolving your complaint. So I would say the best way to reach us is that online form, but we're here and we're available within business hours anytime you need us.
The next one that we have is, how long would someone work with your office? So this really depends on what someone's coming to our office for. For things like support and accommodations and resources, we can really help a student their entire time they're here at SSU. We know that those needs can evolve over time and we can help to adjust those. When someone's working with an ERA, an early resolution agreement that Sarah talked about earlier, it may take a few weeks for that process to resolve. And then when someone's working on an investigation, it typically takes about 60 working days, and oftentimes more than that, depending on the situation that we're looking at, how many folks are involved, and witnesses and things like that. So it really depends on, first, what you're coming to our office for, and then second, what the individual case is. But we have a really big scope of how much and in what capacity we can help people.
Do I have to report within a certain time frame? The answer simply is no. A student can report at any time, and OPHD is available to help review the options.
All right. What if I experienced something before coming to SSU or with someone outside of Sonoma State? That doesn't matter. Our office is still here to support you and help ensure that you're successful while you're here at Sonoma State. So you're still welcome to come forward.
All right, well, thank you all so much for spending some time with us today and getting to learn about these things. I have everyone's faces up now so we can all wave goodbye to you. But like we said, if you need any help, feel free to email us, fill out an online report. Our email address is here on the screen, ophd@sonoma.edu. And then our website, as we had mentioned earlier, is ophd.sonoma.edu. So thanks so much again. We'll see you around on campus sometime.